3,000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by two people.
Yes.
Owen and Paige, or is it Paige and Owen?
Paige and Owen.
I prefer Paige and
Ladies
Owen.
first.
Okay. It's not how it is on the Instagram, though.
That's true.
What? Betrayal.
We're also about equality. So ladies first, but also equal. So.
Or in 2024, it doesn't matter. It can go
Yeah.
interchangeable.
That's right.
It can go
Exactly.
fluid.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay. No, I think that like naturally, even with brothers and sisters, or whether it's families or whatever, there's always a hierarchy of how you say the names. Like
Correct.
some work better than others.
I would say that like alphabetically, O before P. So Owen and Paige. But,
Is that a bit ADD? OCD.
OCD.
If you
Yeah,
learn that
yes.
about me, yes. that
Literally,
is.
yes, he has OCD.
So you guys are, I'm going to say the first couple we've had on the show, but I don't
Nice.
have too many duos on here, so this is something cool that I'm doing as well.
Yeah, cool.
So you guys have your podcast. Do you want to tell people that are watching that may not know too much about it,
Sure.
what it is, and sort of how it's evolved in the most recent times? We'll deep dive into it, but just a little brief history.
Sure. So the podcast is called The Pitch of Discontent. It's an alternative music podcast. We started out doing audio only. We've now moved into video, much like yourself, with full episodes up on YouTube. Paige and I do a weekly show every Monday where we go through new releases in alternative music.
Some pop stuff in there too.
Yeah, for sure.
We try and just kind of cover...
Mostly just shit we like.
Yeah, if it's something that we think is awesome, we'll spotlight it. We're not too genre specific, but alternative is kind of the umbrella term there. And then we do bonus episodes on Fridays, which are usually like artist interviews, and that's usually for bands that have new albums, tours, festivals, that sort of shit.
Yeah. And keeping it somewhat underground, is that the ethos, or just alternative? Like what's the... Yeah.
Well, alternative is such a broad term in of itself.
It is.
So I think it's naming it alternative cuts us away, like gives us some sort of point of difference from every other person with a podcast in music. I don't know how hard and fast we stick to it though.
Yeah, I would say it's alternative in the way that like Triple J is alternative. You know what I mean? Like they might talk about like a mainstream
Debatable.
pop artist, but then they're also going to talk about, a little band from the middle of Whoop Whoop who's got like a brand new single. We kind
Yeah.
of do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like most of the stuff that you're going to hear on the radio, like your AM radio or whatever, we're not going to talk about that, but we will talk about, news.
I mean, we will talk about it. Probably just won't play it.
might talk shit
Like
about
we
it.
definitely will talk about like Halsey wanting to blow up Pitchfork the
Yes.
other week, like things like the pop culture things because it's interesting and funny. But generally, the point is to highlight and kind of uplift the alternative community in Australia. That's kind of where our passion comes from. I
Yeah,
guess.
definitely.
That's the mantra.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so, because it has evolved from originally an audio-only show where you played music and then talked about it, which in this day and age is a bit of a no-no. I'm guessing that's why the push to different platforms and what have
Yeah,
you.
it's a bit
Oh yeah, Spotify shit canned us.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but the short version is that the feature that we were using on Spotify for our audio-only episodes no longer exists. Spotify shit canned that feature. So we were like, okay, well, what do we do with the show?
What feature was it?
I'm
curious to learn about this.
So
Anchor?
Anchor, but Anchor turned into Spotify for podcasts.
Exactly.
correct.
Yeah.
So Anchor had the feature where you could drop
Talk and play.
You could drop music into like a podcast episode. So you would just cut it up into segments and then shuffle it like a playlist.
Yeah, so you kind of make it like a radio show.
Yeah.
Correct.
So those
Yeah.
streams still and like go to that original artist still.
Which seems like a fair way to do it.
It's really good.
It was a really
So
good feature.
smart.
And like the way the show came about is like I was doing a music newsletter because I have a background in music writing and journalism. So I was doing this newsletter and, I would sit down every week and just chat to Paige about it.
You would read it to me because I don't like reading.
She'd be like, I'm not going
Your
to...
own audio.
Yeah, he's essentially my
She'd be
audio
like,
book.
I'm your wife, but I'm not going to read that. Can you just read it to me?
I wanted to support him still.
And I was like, okay. And then after doing that long enough, we were like, we should just make this a podcast. And I was like, well, I don't want to do it unless I can just like play people the music that I'm talking about. Because it's one thing to write about it. It's another thing to actually listen to it and make up your own mind.
Yep.
So, yeah, we found that feature through Anchor, which became Spotify for podcasters. We were like, that fits perfectly. We did, I want to say like 100 and maybe like 150 episodes with that feature. And then they canned it as of July this year.
And that's sort of when the handover happened? Or
Yeah.
were they rebranded or it got bought by Spotify?
It was, yeah.
No, they got bought by Spotify like a while ago, but
No,
they
it was when Spotify did that huge change of management.
yeah.
And they were like just throwing like the whole car thing that Spotify had that they just completely tossed in the bin.
What was that?
I don't even like a device that is like a smart TV, but
It looked
for
like
radio,
a little
I guess.
like a Navman thing, but it was so that you could play
Physical hardware product
like
that
a
they came out with.
and
Yeah.
they were like, oh, plug this into your car to play Spotify, and people were like,
Doesn't my car already do
doesn't
that?
Apple Play already do that? Like, what? And I'm like,
Retrospectively works great from
Yeah,
15 years ago.
sure.
yeah,
It was
totally.
really weird.
So that didn't work.
Naturally,
out.
that also got shit canned. Yes.
But yeah, so they were making some pretty shit decisions, and one of those being they got rid of that feature. And like, we weren't the only podcast using
it sucks. There was like a few people also doing what we did that completely lost their format as well, and they just
Oh, Racy.
our dogs here, and they stopped making podcasts, so they don't have any. They defunct now, so it sucks. It ruined like
Yeah.
a lot of creative outlets for people.
Yeah, but for us, we were like, okay, we can either be like mad about it and we can be like, fuck Spotify for taking that feature away, or we can be like, we can push the show.
Well, it was
to
kind of a
something
blessing
new.
in disguise because
Yeah.
ultimately we were able to move to YouTube and get like an entirely different format and viewership, I think.
Yeah, it's a funny scenario because as much as we rely on platforms, say like Instagram, for example, and then we are at their mercy. They can change it at any time. And that's just the way it
Absolutely.
is.
And
I
they
know-
do.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
people that have built a huge following with still shots and then they get pushed to video and they don't get the traction. That happens
Yeah.
a lot. So you've got to be willing to adapt because things are going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
that's
mean, I'm
exactly
sure we
right.
can get into this, Maloney, but like, I know from reading like other people's kind of journeys into like content creation and stuff, like the minute you start trying to chase the algorithm, the minute
It becomes miserable.
you just like lose all creative juice because you're trying to like chase this ephemeral thing that you don't know what it is, they won't tell you what it is, and they can change
And they
it at
change
any
it,
moment.
yeah.
So like,
And that definitely comes across with, and you guys would see, there's a lot of people that make podcast content.
I know.
that-
How
that
weird is
just
that?
for reels, and they
Yes.
don't, and there's no substance in the actual episodes.
Correct.
Where I'm from the school of thought, and same as you guys, I believe that we make those reels to draw people to the long.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Agreed.
And so if you're feeding the algorithm like that, if you're making it for the wrong reasons, it's shit.
it's
Yeah,
dog
definitely.
shit. So
Well, like, there are some that aren't even podcasts, some of those clips.
I
They're
know.
literally just people making
what-
TikToks.
What's like funny as is the ads that they do for that stuff where they set it up like it looks like a podcast and they
Yes.
talk about some product like it's real life, and you're like, wow, this is weird fucking advertising world.
What, mushroom pills?
I think it's just an interesting spot that we're in. Like, obviously, we do like music podcasts, right? So maybe not like a super serious thing, but like you look at the US election right now, like Trump's going on Rogan, like a bunch of the political candidates are going on podcasts. They're calling this the podcast election. So like
Oh, really?
people do look to this format for some kind of like authority and information. So the people who are grifting off it are like, all right, I can do an ad read, make it look like a podcast. People will pay attention, and then I'm just going to sell them shit.
Yeah,
Honestly, like, you got to respect the grind a little.
A little bit.
yeah. It is a weird space that we're in, and I don't think that video podcasting is pretty new, and I don't think we've found where it's at yet.
Yeah,
No.
I agree.
And it's interesting that you bring up Rogan because obviously Spotify went all in
Yeah.
on the video podcast, and Spotify didn't even have video
No.
till they paid him
know.
$100 million, and then they're pushing video.
Yeah.
So that's why the audio only, I think that's probably a factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Joe Rogan indirectly ruined that feature.
Yeah, well, I look at
Damn it, Joe.
Damn you, Joe. I look at playlists that we build for the show, and only recently on the Spotify app, it started to show like which ones have a music video or not, and it's trying to push you to like watch the music video in the Spotify
Yeah.
app. I was like, can you just play the
Why
fucking
does every
music?
app
Like,
have to do everything?
Yeah.
Well, I
frustrating.
guess because that in the technology space, they don't really know what's going to kick off
No.
anyway. So they're just trying to put all their eggs in one basket.
try and
but like
spread
even
it.
Spotify the other day, they're like, Amel and the Sniffers are touring the UK, and I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm not there.
That's good for
and,
them.
And like, why are you sending me these updates?
Yeah,
Yeah.
surely they would have your information to know what to service.
Where you're from at the very least.
And I think the
Yeah.
minute they figure out how to do that reliably and consistently, a lot of that stuff will change. But it's so janky right now. It doesn't really feel like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So with your playlist now that you do, is that a direct way to drive punters to your actual episodes, or is it just something that sits by itself as this is affiliated with the podcast?
So I do it in a couple of different spaces. So for the weekly show, oh, buddy.
Grab him on your lap or something if he wants to.
Yeah, maybe do that. Grab him.
Hello, Suki.
For the weekly show, I put the full episode up on YouTube, and I will put little clips of each song that we talk about in the episode.
Can you get away with a little bit with copyright?
I can do 29 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Under 30 seconds, it gets hit with copyright, but it's not a strike. So they let it go
So
through.
we can't monetize that.
So a lot of that stuff is
Which is
not
why we love
monetizable.
our Patreon subscribers.
Yes. But so that's what we do in the main YouTube episodes. And then to kind of build out the channel, I make an episode playlist on YouTube, which is all of the music videos. So people can go and watch that kind of like it would be like watching Rage or whatever, and all the music videos play. And then on Spotify, I have just a running playlist of every episode, and I add to it. And there's 350 songs on there or whatever.
And that's forever evolving.
And
Yes,
that's just added to each week. So I want to try and have a place for people if they just want something to put on shuffle and they just want to know new stuff that we're talking about, they listen to that. If they want a specific episode, they can go to YouTube. Try and just fill a bunch of
Cover all
different
bases,
places with
yeah.
stuff.
So with those playlists on YouTube, and I'm asking because I'm curious now because I want to do it too. When you put those videos up, does that directly link to your page, or is that how does that work? The playlist thing.
I had to go down some Reddit thread rabbit holes to figure out how to do it. But so the main YouTube channel, you can't do it. But then you have a separate channel, which is Owen at the Pitch of Discontent. And I can do that because it's technically not a business channel. Okay. It's just a personal channel. Right. Personal channels can make the playlists, and then I can grab that link and link it to the main channel, and it just shows up on our channel page.
In the in the description?
Yeah. I can show you how to do it if you want.
That's a great loophole.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because I Googled it and I was like, surely that's a thing, right? Surely if I'm doing a YouTube podcast about music, I can make playlists of the music that I'm talking about. And it was like, oh, no, you can't make playlists if you're this type of channel. And I was like, that's bullshit. So there's got to be a workaround. And there is for the moment.
Yeah, that is the thing with the internet. There's always some sort of loophole if you dig deep.
Someone's figured it out.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think technically the, 25 seconds is counted as a sample. So that's copy left. Okay. So we can include it in the video and should be able to monetize it because that's copy left. A DJ can use samples and still be able to make money off their reinvented music. Yep. But YouTube is just so strange about how they manage DCM claims and take down videos. So we're just trying to do it by their rules as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what fucking makes me really scratch my head with YouTube is that sometimes people have channels that it's basically regurgitated content.
Yep.
Yes.
Reaction videos.
Totally.
We're just going to watch this person go live and talk about that. How does I just can't get my head around it.
I'm in the same boat. I follow a lot of reaction channels because that's how I find a lot of stuff. And
they're great. Some of them are really entertaining.
And we have mates who do them and stuff. So there is a space where they allow that sort of stuff. And I've recently seen there's a big music YouTuber who's started a second channel where he just watches TV shows and he's just reacting to an entire episode of a TV show. And I'm like, how the fuck is that allowed? But apparently it is.
Because it's creative because you're adding or transforming the work. you're able to do that.
Well, I guess it would come into case by case scenario whether or not the people that own that content are sending
If
them
they get
cease and
mad,
desist.
yeah.
Or are they like, this is good? If he reacts to our new season
It's
of blah,
getting
blah, blah,
eyes
it's
on it.
Yeah.
I think it definitely depends on the license holder, but
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it doesn't change the fact that it is completely legal. But at the end of the day, like if someone wants to sue, I don't exactly have the money to like go to court over that. You know what I mean? So like it's like anything litigious. It's a rich man's game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it, but I copped one the other day.
Really?
Yeah, and I just pulled it down.
Yeah, it's just easier.
And it wasn't
Hey,
even a copyright thing. But yeah, I can't be bothered getting into it. But I'm just like, man, what am I going to do? Spend $1,200 to send a
Absolutely.
letter back and just
Nah.
fucking bow down and
it's just
And,
easier.
I mean, like
yeah.
our channel is like admittedly smaller than yours, Maloney. So like we're not in the business of like monetizing anything that we do yet. Like at the moment, we're just trying to get stuff up and out there for people.
Yeah.
Eventually, the channel will hit a point where some of the stuff we've done is monetized. Some of it won't be, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
But the monetization thing, like even though I can monetize, I'm not going to, because what's the point of for $50 an episode
Yeah.
jamming some ads in there and giving people another
I
hurdle?
agree.
You
Absolutely.
know, like
So, like-
unless you're getting 20,000, 50,000 views and it's significant, I just don't see the point.
Yeah, I'm pretty much of the same mind. Like we have a Patreon, we have a couple people over there subscribing to the show, and like I would much rather do that and offer like extra bonus stuff and clip up new episodes and stuff for them.
It's extra pressure on you though.
It does, but at the same time, like I feel better about doing that and people giving us money for that extra stuff than jamming, I don't
Ads
know,
in,
shave
or
a shop
HelloFresh.
ads into a fucking episode or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's totally. And look, I've even had people from personally try and get some advertising or product placement in the show. And if it's not on brand, it's like, nah.
If it's
why
not
would
something that
do
you
it?
use, yeah, for
and
sure.
That just comes across tacky. But when you look at it, and back to the Spotify thing, some of the really big platforms still do those product placements. So
They
it
do.
goes to show that punters are used to that.
Yeah.
Like I pay for Spotify Premium, obviously, but whenever I listen to a podcast, there's ads jammed in there.
Yeah.
That
You
was a
pay
big part of the reason that they took off the talk and play, because people cottoned onto that. They were like, why am I still getting ads then? Like, what's the point of premium? Super premium. There should be like an extra level.
Well, and that's the other thing with YouTube. Like, if you become a point that you are a content creator and you're monetized, one of the perks should be you get YouTube Premium, surely.
Yeah, for
know,
sure.
You would think so, but
Oh, I like that as an idea.
That's got to be something.
yeah.
I don't think there's anything that you get for 10,000 subsbubscribers. Surely they could make that a thing.
I mean, that would be cool. YouTube,
Genuinely,
if you're
that
watching,
would be
do
really.
it.
Yeah, please.
It's on your platform. But it is a really funny spot, and I think that like you guys are similar to me. We're just putting it out there and hoping that something happens.
Yeah.
And I think there's other people that are trying to do something. They have a business plan, probably better than you or I do.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't hit, then they go, all right, well, podcasting was hard. I'm going to be a motivational speaker.
I've noticed that, yeah. Or a business coach is really popular.
Yeah, people that can't run their own business telling you how to run yours.
That's exactly
Love
right. And the first step is always, okay, so you need to start teaching classes on how to run a business. And you're like, what?
I mean, speaking of the YouTube thing, like, I get all these videos serviced about like being a small channel, and they're like, how to increase the views for your small channel, and you watch it, and it's another small channel, and it's like, dog, if it's not working for you, like, why the fuck would I listen to you? Like, come on.
social media brands that have 200 Instagram followers, like, we'll help you build your social media. You're like, well, you're doing a shit job doing it yourself.
100%.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't know. It's tough, and I'm sure you feel the pinch of trying to do like 5 different things at once when all you really want to do is create like a good show and a good
That's
thing
the
that
thing.
people want to watch.
That's definitely the thing. It's when the admin and the other stuff gets in
Totally.
the way of making the good content. And I'm really hoping that, channels like ours that are sort of you guys been around for longer, but in the video game, we're kind of in our infancy. Hopefully that things pick up and platforms like YouTube will start pushing that stuff
Totally,
more.
yeah.
Because like I know for a fact that most people watch this show on their TV.
Yeah.
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 Right? So
same.
that means it's this sort of format. I'm not saying my show, but this kind of format is replacing people watching a current
Like,
affair
yeah.
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
Rage.
YouTube needs to come to the table with that and start pushing this stuff more.
Yeah.
Who's going to sit on their couch and watch how to change your car tire video. You watch that on your phone, but you
Yes.
might watch long form stuff on your couch.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
how we start every day.
Yeah, and that was like the benchmark. So when we got all the gear and we like figured out how we were going to do the video stuff, and we did like a test episode, the real like test of like, is this shit or not, was I like bounced it up to the hard drive and I was like, all right, we got to watch this on the TV, because if it looks like shit, then we wouldn't watch it, because we watch all of our stuff on the TV. And we put it on and we were like, oh, this is good. We're like,
looks fine.
nice.
Yeah.
But that was the benchmark, right? Is like, this is where we watch all of our stuff. So like, we've got to do something that's at least on par with that.
Yeah, I like that. It's like Dr. Dre taking the tape and listening to it in his car. He's like, this is where everyone's going to listen to music. So if it sounds like dog shit in the car, we got to remaster it.
You always got to listen to mixes in the car.
That's the first thing they teach you.
Yeah.
So with the podcast, you went from the audio. So the audio thing is the way it started. And was it well received to start with? Like, is there people in Melbourne or Australia doing a similar thing?
There's a couple of similar type podcasts. Like, we've had some guests on the show from the Oblivious Maximus podcast. They're like a similar alternative kind of music podcast, mostly focusing on like hardcore in like Sydney and Melbourne. And then there's another Melbourne podcast called What We Do on the Weekend. And we've had Jace from that show on our podcast. So there's like a couple of other ones. But
we're all just like a bit of a community. It's really
everyone's got like a
nice.
different vibe and a different kind of like focus.
Something they bring to the table, you know?
But ours was definitely like the playlist thing. That was kind of the main thing. And that was like, again, coming out of that like newsletter that I was doing, I was like, we're adapting that into audio, and now we're adapting that into video. But yeah, it's been well received. And I think we get a lot of support from...
We still have listeners on Spotify.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that I feel like we've retained that base, but the YouTube watchers seem completely different entirely.
It's a different audience for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, we get a lot of support from people kind of peripheral to the music. So like your publicists, your PR
Yeah, we
people,
do.
labels, like definitely get a lot of people in my email inbox like, here's this new record, here's this band coming through, do you want to have them on the show? So like some of the stuff is me pitching to artists like, hey, come on the show. And then probably about half of it or more is people coming to me and being like, can you shout this out on the show? Can you get them on the show? So I kind of work through that as like the daily admin stuff.
Yeah.
Do the publicists, when they do that, do they look at how big the platform is, or they're just like they're going, these guys have an audience?
I think there's I guess we would be considered like micro.
Yeah, like I mean,
Influence?
we're pretty humble about our reach, but I think
But the fact that people are reaching out to you though says
Yeah.
something.
I think it must just be like good enough quality that's okay.
that's kind of what I rest on,
yeah.
right? Is that obviously we're doing something that is good and has value
and
to
gets
those
them
people.
coverage at the end of the day.
Because like you were saying, like we really focus on having like a deep kind of chat about the music. And I really want to kind of like create a space for a long form conversation with an artist, particularly for our guest episodes, to have them kind of talk about whatever it is they want to talk about, but more specifically to kind of like dig a little bit deeper than just like the surface interview. Like nothing pisses me off more than watching like festival interview coverage, and it's just the most like puff piece, surface level stuff. It's like, oh, how was your breakfast? Good, nice.
Have people in Australia been welcoming to you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love Australia. It's been great.
Yeah,
I held a koala.
and like there's a space for that, but it's not our show. Like I want our show to have a little bit more substance to it, a little bit more depth, and I like to think that I can get that out of an artist, you know, because I give a shit. Like I want
the
that.
main feedback that Owen gets from artists is usually like, it seems like you actually give a shit about my band and my music, and that's like that should be the lowest bar
Yeah, it's
ever.
the bare minimum.
But yeah, that's often what we hear is like, you asked XYZ question and it made it very clear to me you actually listen to me.
Yeah.
Which raises like, well, how many interviews have you done on this junket that you could tell that the person asking the questions did not give a shit?
No.
Or didn't prep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because prep is like a big thing to kind of know like who you're talking to and like what
for
questions
sure.
to ask.
Yeah, I think with a lot of that stuff, once you get managers and then PR people involved, and then it becomes a bit of a like a circus as well. Because,
Totally.
you know, you see that with those old TV interviews where, you know, Mel Gibson's in town doing his tour and he'll sit down with 15 different people that are all from, you know, and they like...
And they're
what-
exhausted by the end
it's
of
like,
it.
whatever,
Yeah.
And I mean, like,
movie, fuck it.
we have a similar thing though, right? So like, for example, like I've got an episode with Bill from Mastodon coming out. Mastodon are coming here for the Good Things Festival later this year. So they were doing press to promo that. And by the time I spoke to Bill for, you know, like 40, 45 minutes, I think that was like the 5th interview that he'd done that morning. So like, you know, he was just sitting in his studio and it was over Zoom or whatever, but like, that's the same conversation he's probably had 3 or 4 times already. So like, I'm very conscious of that. So when I get into those spots, I want to try and like hit him with a curveball, ask a weird question, try and like nerd out about something, you know, build a rapport that's not just like, hey man, how you doing? Like,
Yeah, for sure. You know who the master of that is Nardwar, man.
I-
He
yeah.
smashes it like
Yeah.
For sure.
that's the upper echelon of like what to aim for. I'm not on that league, but I would aspire to
day.
be one day.
Yeah, I love it how he must just like face stalk. What school did this person go to? The
weird.
yearbook of that. Let's find who his best friend was. Let's find who his school teacher was. Ask him what he was listening to then.
Yeah.
Bang, here's a 12-inch you were listening to in 85. And people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
He's got ancestry.com open.
I do like a little bit of that. I had the boys from Gravemind on the show, and I like searched all of the members, and then I went on Discogs, like the vinyl thing, because Discogs has a really good like catalog of like releases, and I found like a band that one of the members was in like before he joined this band, and I was like, oh, so you were in this band, you put out this release, and he was like, how the fuck did you find that? He was like, it was on MySpace. He's like, how did you find it? And I was like, Discogs, my bro. I do my research.
I loved MySpace. It was such a better platform for music. I think.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
so
for
good.
sure.
So good.
Yeah.
It was like a big part of my kind of like end of high school, early kind of adult life was, you know, going to shows and being a little fucking mall rat emo. Going
And having
to
your
hardcore
MySpace
shows and
song.
stuff.
Like, what's your favorite song that you've got on your page?
And your top 8, figuring like who are your day ones that you want to put up
Absolutely.
on
Or
the top
dropping
8.
people out of the top 8 when they pissed you off.
Ruthless.
Yeah, it's a shame that we've lost that. Well, it's still there in a weird capacity.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's still there. But it's a shame because I think it was a great way for artists, musically specifically, to push their product and
Yeah.
to get it out there for free. You know.
And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that was really underrated about MySpace as like a social platform was like you could go in, and if you had very basic like HTML page knowledge,
It was kind of cringy. though.
you could customize the page and like you could like make it look cool however you wanted. And now like you look at someone's Facebook and it's all sanitized the same, like it's all the same kind of layout and stuff, and like it's boring. Like back in MySpace, you could have cringy fonts and like flash animations
You
and shit.
could, which now would be considered retro for kids, and
Absolutely.
they try and do the whole sort of design style of that early
The
internet sort of stuff.
Y2K design
Yeah.
style. Yeah.
But the thing is, I think that that sort of code stuff was the eventual downfall because people just remember just getting spammed with ads, and that's what
That's
really
true.
killed it. And then Facebook comes along, blue, white,
Yeah.
like colors that banks use. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
that's right.
Looks safe. You're not going to get hacked here. You know?
Yeah, I think they're using the Apple like method. Simple is better for sure.
Well, yeah, but then it looks so homogenized and so boring.
Yeah.
But then, like, they tried to bring MySpace back and make it just for music, and
It was
that
terrible.
failed.
It was
That
terrible.
did,
It looked
yeah.
like absolute dog shit. Yeah.
We'd moved on at that point too. Like everyone had well and truly left MySpace and had moved to no one was really using it anymore.
I think the thing is like it's kind of like what we were talking about with the algorithms, right? Like if you I'm not sure if the mic caught that, Reese.
mate.
Good yawn. Yeah, like all of those platforms are temporary, right? Like they all go somewhere. So like I'm thinking about Twitter or X, whatever the fuck Elon wants you to call it. Like I use that as a tool to network with other writers, and you know I got some good work out of that for like music writing pieces, writing for Bandcamp, Brooklyn Vegan, bunch of different like publications, and like it was a cool space to kind of connect with people all over the world. and then they just set it on fire, and now it's like it's complete trash. It's full of Nazis and shit. Like,
Yeah,
why-
for sure.
Wow.
So like, I don't know. Like all of those things are at the whim of big tech and the CEO dickheads who run them.
But
So,
what happens, and it's sad, most of them, and I'm guessing a similar sort of thing happens with Spotify and Anchor, is they just buy out the competitor.
absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And
Rest
with
in
the-
peace, Vine.
Yeah, Vine, yeah. Well, that Vine, I don't think they got bought out. Instagram just started making videos and just
No, Twitter bought Vine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And shut it down.
You had 6 seconds, and that was like,
Yeah,
whoa, that's 6
it was
seconds to
crazy.
make a Vine. Yeah.
And like most of the people who managed to make Vine work ended up pivoting into YouTube, and they became like the
Some
new
of them tried and failed.
yeah, but they became like YouTube influencers and stuff. So like you do have to be adaptable, but I think you kind of have to realize that like those platforms aren't forever, and like they will go somewhere. And like I'm in my mid-30s. Like we had MySpace, we had Facebook, which is a graveyard for nanas and stuff now, and then Instagram like cops a lot of shit for just being millennials. Twitter's full of Nazis. Like they all eventually die, is what I'm saying.
But
So,
you know
like,
what? This is a really interesting one. And I know people have tried Vimeo and whatever, but YouTube really locked down the video thing like
Yes.
properly.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's like, how has no one came and sort of give it a shake up? It's really strange.
it is-
Shout out Nebula.
Yeah, Nebula's pretty cool. We subscribe to Nebula because like a lot of the YouTubers that we follow, they do like a worker-owned thing with Nebula.
So what's Nebula? I don't know.
So it's a bunch of YouTube creators. They like pooled all of their money and stuff together, created a streaming platform where they can put stuff that would get like demonetized or content restricted on
Similar
YouTube.
to Rumble, they sort of do a similar
Kind of like that, but yeah. And they've just started doing original content. So they've started like greenlighting movies from YouTubers. They've produced like television series and stuff. So like it's a kind of like a pseudo Netflix type thing, but for like YouTubers.
And this is the thing that sounds awesome as someone who, for lack of a better term, is a content creator myself, right?
Yeah.
But when there's too many platforms, how do you focus on one? And you got 2,000 followers here and 1,000 there and 500 here,
Absolutely.
and then you don't get the streams. Like you
Yeah.
kind of need to focus on one. I feel like.
No,
Yeah.
totally. I agree with that.
I
Yeah.
mean, most of them,
We're not on Nebula.
no, God no. But like, I feel like
Do you have to be invited to be on Nebula? Like
think-
what?
I think you do,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
Right, okay.
It's like a pretty like cushy thing, but no, you're right. Like too many platforms, too diffuse in terms of your subscriber base is just like incredibly hard to follow. I feel stressed out thinking about like the people who follow us on Instagram, the people who follow the show on Spotify, the people who follow the show on YouTube. I'm like, man, I wish I could just get everyone in like one space. That
That's
would
the
be
thing,
cool.
right? Yeah, for ages I just stopped doing Spotify because
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, every time I put up a video that might get 1,500 views on YouTube, it's getting 1,000 on YouTube and 500 on Spotify.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
you're splitting your audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it, and then people keep asking, and then I'm like, okay, well, if Spotify are putting all this money into video podcasts, obviously they see a future in it. So I'm like, okay, I'll put it on there. Again, you split your views. You get 3,000, you get 2,000.
It's a different audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird.
But then you've got to put them. Then people go, "You're on Spotify. Why aren't you on Apple Music? Why aren't you on podcast? Why aren't
You
you
need
on
a
this?"
distro all of a sudden.
I know,
Yeah.
but yeah. Do you do all those platforms?
No. So we still use Spotify for podcasters, and through that, I can push to Apple Music. And then
I get you to show me how to do
Yeah,
that. So I don't know
that's-
how to do it.
And
I didn't
that's
know that.
that's for the audio only stuff. And then the video is solely on YouTube. And then we do bonus episodes that go up on Patreon. So
So
that
you don't put video on Spotify.
No.
no.
But if they're pushing in that direction, it just do you know what I mean?
The
Yeah.
bridge is burnt, Maloney.
Okay.
They fucked us over by taking that playlist feature out. So I was
Fair
like,
enough.
I'm gonna
Tempted
take my
us.
video
Elsewhere.
and walk on over to YouTube. Sorry, dog.
Yeah. So but that does kind of make sense, I guess. If people want to see the visual aspect, they have to go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Generally.
But I did a little bit of market research, and like for podcasts, if you're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music, that's like close to like 85% of like the global listening market. And there's like a couple of other little distros like Podbean or whatever, and like all the little ones, like I don't care about that. If
Did you
I'm
just pick that up? Podbean?
no,
There
it's
is
a thing.
Sprout. There's a Sprout one. Isn't
Oh, I've
there?
heard
Yeah.
it. I feel like I've heard of Sprout.
I basically just looked and I was like, what is the most like minimal effort most people I can get our stuff to? And I was like, all right, I'll do those 3 and that's it.
Yeah. But do you find that it splits your audience though? And
It does.
You'd like to
Yeah.
have those numbers all in one spot.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd like to have just one spot to like look at all that, but also just a way to like communicate to them as like a mailing list to be like, hey, new episode's out, go check it out.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you got to go to like the social channels and then you got to put up a note on YouTube and then you got to do this.
Yeah, I think YouTube is trying to kind of sort of have a central spot where
Yeah.
you can communicate and you can subscribe on YouTube, which I guess is their way of trying to go around the Patreon thing.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
yeah.
which is probably it would be great for them to have it in all in one space. And as we were saying before, it seems like YouTube have the best longevity in the space. So you kind of sort but then they can demonetize your shit at any time.
Yeah, that's right. So again, like that's the fragile kind of nature of it is like we just know that like we can't take any of it for granted. And like with Patreon, like you can pretty much put whatever you want up there because it's paywalled. So like the idea is that like the people who do want to support the show, if we can convince them to be patrons, then we've kind of got them locked in there. We've got their email info, they're sending us money. Like it's a very transactional thing, but at least that way if things change, we can hit all those people up and be like, hey, go watch over here or whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely a route I haven't gone down, and a lot of people do it. And I guess it just adds an extra step of admin and stuff you've got to do,
Yes.
plus puts pressure on you to come up with extra content that people want to see.
Yeah.
But I guess it probably is a way to do it moving forward. When you started that, were people receptive? Was it hard? Because like we've spent a whole lot of time telling people, hey, it's free to watch our shit. And then you're like, now you can pay as well.
I don't know. I wouldn't say hard. It is.
Because I think, like, at the end of the day, we're still very open to our viewers just watching the content that we put out for free because we, like, absolutely understand that times are tough and you can, like, who has the money to spend on the media they're consuming, I guess, especially when there's hundreds of other sources of that are free.
Yep.
So we still give free content, and ultimately if people want to support us, we kind of come at it more of like, we appreciate it, that's what's what is he
So what can they expect if they subscribe to the Patreon? What extra do they get?
So I tried to kind of come up with ideas for that, and I ended up kind of throwing it back to the early incarnation of the show. So if we have someone come into the studio, I'll usually do like a main episode with them that's like an hour, and then we stop, we kind of make sure everyone's chill, and then I'm like, all right, do you want to just do like 20 minutes bonus content for the Patreon? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And then I've just been asking them like some goofy hypothetical questions like, you're on a desert island. You can only listen to 3 songs.
Yeah.
You can only listen to 3 songs for the rest of your life. What are they? Go off the top of your head. And like, it's meant to be goofy. It's meant to be fun. But then I take all of those songs and I download the music videos. I put them in a playlist and I create a video that's kind of like watching Rage and I put that up on the Patreon. The idea being that like, you can stream that to your TV and you can watch like, you can watch that artist talk about their hypothetical
There's
playlist.
no copyright issues within that?
It's on Patreon. It's paywalled, so they don't care.
That's cool.
And I
Yeah.
mean, it still is like technically fair use just because of that. Again, like there has been a creative change. You've added a spin on it. But I do think that there needs to be more conversation around the laws regarding, because I just don't think that, I just don't think free to air TV has like legs anymore. No. And if everything's moving to streaming, there needs to be a space for the Rages of the world.
Yeah.
And those, like, where is MTV now? Like, is anyone watching MTV anymore?
Watching the Kardashians on MTV.
Yeah,
that's correct,
like it's mostly reality TV now. So I do think like for some reason, YouTube specifically does seem to just ignore, and I mean, to be fair, copyright and copyleft laws change a lot. It's rapidly changing. So it can be hard to keep up with. And I do think that YouTube just do like a blanket rule of we've flagged there's copyright music in this, so it cannot be monetized in sometimes just certain areas of the world. Like Russia really hates any sort of copyrighted music.
We like anything that's distributed through a major label, they are pretty much all adamantly like barring stuff in Russia. So like I'll get like an indie band's like film clip, it'll be distributed through a major label, then it'll get flagged as like, your viewers in Belarus and Russia can't watch this. And I'm like,
We're
okay.
huge in Belarus.
I was like, okay, I guess.
Not the Belarus viewers.
And it's like, it's not a copyright strike, but it is just weird to have that kind of flagged.
Yeah.
We owe you a pen.
Oh, man.
Sorry, Maloney. The damage.
Yeah, it's like I've had a. You might have seen some of the episodes where we'll have MCs on and they rap, and I've had a guy rapping to his own instrumental that he
Stop.
created himself, and he's not a huge. And then YouTube flagged that as this is a copyright to him. I'm like, but he's the artist rapping on his
he's
own
the
thing that he made.
artist.
I was watching a video. It was a guitarist in like a European death metal band. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he's a YouTuber. He does like some content stuff, and he was like, some guy hit me with copyright for my own song. and it was a guitar playthrough of a song that he wrote that was on his solo album. And then the guy had taken the music, run it through like a shitty like bit tune thing, so it was all janky and like out of tune and slowed down. And then he put it up on Spotify and then used that to claim the guy's original. So
Wow, what a long-winded way to just jard someone.
yeah,
That's crazy.
it was crazy. And I was just like, that's wild.
Yeah, I've heard of people that have just used total AI to start like fake bands or
Yep.
fake artists and just put them out there and make money.
I had one come up in my YouTube algorithm the other day. It was like, what was it called? Like Art School Trauma Club or something. And I was like, that sounds like a bad pop punk name. I was like, I'll buy it.
Yeah,
What's going
you
on?
got me hooked.
And I listened and I was like, this sounds like 90% human, but there's like just a little bit off. And I was like, what's going on here? So I like look up their Spotify, like 2 followers. Look up the YouTube, 2 followers. Google the name, nothing. No info about any of the members.
But they
and I was
found
like,
you.
I was like, YouTube found me.
Yeah.
YouTube suggested it to me.
In hindsight, the name sounds like a band name generator name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
100%. So like, and that was the thing. Like, it was corny enough that I was like, I'll buy it. I'll listen to that. But yeah, it was totally AI. It was all fake.
Yeah, and that's where I have some comfort in what we all do is
Yeah.
because I think with all this AI stuff, there has to be a push for actual humans talking
Yeah.
at some stage.
For sure.
And getting people into a studio and talking and knowing that that's 100% legitimate has
Yeah.
to start resonating with people more and more.
I think so too. And like coming out of a music writing background, like it's really hard to make a career in that. There's
Absolutely.
almost like no way to do it. But I feel like as we get pushed into all of this AI bullshit, the push back will be people wanting human creation, wanting to read reviews and have people that actually have taste and opinions and things to say rather than just like shit that's regurgitated and thrown at you. That's my hope.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And this is another thing that we've lost via the algorithms is DJs and people who would be tastemakers, like that would write, you know, blogs or posts about what they like and stuff that would hit their radar, all of a sudden got pushed away because algorithms said people who like this also like this and you might like this.
Yeah.
So the tastemakers somewhat disappeared.
Yeah.
And we need to bring them back.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I mean, like, I kind of think of what we do for the show as kind of like sitting somewhat in between both, because I mean, like, Spotify definitely recommends stuff to me. YouTube recommends stuff to me. And I consume a lot of music. So I sit there and I listen to all of it. But then I'm a human being consuming all of that and going, that sucks. This is mid. That's actually really good. Wow, that's a cool band from Belgium that I've never heard before. I'm going to put that in the newsletter and put it in the podcast and hopefully people dig it. Yep. So like maybe Spotify and YouTube are doing that for other people, but I kind of add like another layer of curation to that is my hope.
Yeah,
So-
no, and I think that's totally spot on. And also with like, say, newsletters, I was actually talking to my partner about this last night, just opening my email, and I'm like,
Oh, so
man,
exhausting.
It is just relentless.
Especially this time of year.
But it's just so much shit, you know,
Yeah.
something that you once inquired about 10 years ago and now they're sending you follow-up emails and then you just...
It's enough you just want to like leave that email address behind and like
Yeah.
start fresh.
I feel like every 12 months I want to start a new email address, and those ones are just because it just becomes daunting. And once you
Yeah.
let that tick over a bit, you're just like, oh,
Yeah, we've
I'm
talked about this on the
exhausted.
pod a little bit, but like I probably get upwards of 200 press releases a week from labels, PR, bands, and I'll be honest, like I just don't have the time to listen to it all. So I'm kind of like filtering through at the subject line going, I recognize that label, cool, don't know that. Off to a folder that I'll never look at.
That's a bad headshot of a
Yeah,
like-
that's a weird promo shot. Not gonna look at that. So like, it sucks
It
because
sucks
there's
because it's like cutting. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that the music isn't good either.
No, 'cause I haven't
It's
even
just
listened to the music.
How do you get through all of that in a
yeah,
week?
it's managing 50 emails a day.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how do you do it?
And that's why, and I think with getting you guys on the show, I do it through Instagram
Hmm.
and messages, DMs in there, because in the email it just gets lost.
Oh,
And-
we've had the same thing. Yeah, for sure.
And especially when, and you guys would deal with it a lot more than me, you've got managers and labels.
Mm.
So they message, hey, we'd like to get this person on your show. Okay, cool. And then you talk to them, this is how it works. They're like, okay, cool. Now I've linked you in with the artist, and now you can do all that again and see when they can come on. And
Have
you're like,
exactly the
"Fuck."
same conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
You're like, all right. And so I just go directly to the person and say, hey, do you actually want to be on the show? Or is this person just sitting there trying to get you some publicity and you've got no fucking interest in it?
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than trying to do an interview with an artist when they don't want to be there and then
Yeah.
they don't want to do the press.
Yeah,
like
try get him to drive an hour down the peninsula.
Oh yeah, that would be a nightmare.
you're really pulling our arm to get us down here, Maloney.
It's a nice part of the world.
It's beautiful.
It's lovely. We love it down here.
It's a good day's trip down here. But when people, I had an artist that's coming later in this month, and she's like, "I'm going to catch public transport from
Oh.
Reservoir." I'm like, "You're not, man. You're just not." She's like, "Oh,
That's
I'll be
like
fine."
where we live. There's
Yeah.
no way.
That would
I
take
tried
you-
to tell her it'll take like 3 hours.
Yeah.
She's like, "No, it'll be fine." I don't know. Whatever. Each their
Well,
own.
maybe she likes it. She'll read a book or something and just relax.
In her defence, she's not from Victoria, so
Okay.
maybe she just wants to see a bit of the countryside. But that's
Well,
a full
that's
day trip to
true.
come here and shoot for
That's a
cocktails.
big day.
What are you doing, Reese?
Bro, what is up with you?
Wait.
Back on. We're back on. We're off. We're on. Is Reese okay? Hopefully he's okay.
He's fine.
more
He's
chill.
just sitting on the rug.
He just
He's
wants
doing
to
good.
destroy everything.
Good on you, Reese. All right, we'll crack another beer. What we were talking about? I can't even remember.
Oh, I don't even know.
I think we stopped talking about like some of the Patreon stuff, and then Paige was talking about some ad thing that we had removed on the show.
Yeah, I was just mentioning the we had like an ad rejected because a woman's clavicle was on the front of an album cover.
Yeah.
Like no
Which
breasts.
is a collarbone for people that don't know what a clavicle is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that provocative.
That's right.
it's
I now remember what she's talking about. Yeah, we were originally trying to do just like some Instagram ads, just like through Meta. Like
Yeah.
you pay a couple of bucks
Not
and
worth
it like
it.
I've never
Have
done
you?
that, no.
Nothing?
it's
Yeah.
not worth it.
Wi-
But
it's-
we were like, oh well, we'll throw $30 at it. We'll see what happens. You know what I mean? Like nothing crazy. And they were like, oh, you can't do this ad because there's like nudity. And we were like, what the fuck? And it was an album cover and like just a chick's chest.
Not even no cleavage.
Meanwhile,
Just the collarbone.
some of the stuff on Instagram is out there.
Yeah.
look.
It's crazy.
You know, let a dozen flowers bloom as far as I'm concerned. But it is really strange the way that like these massive influencers will have like, you know, like, and rightly so, them in a bikini or something, but like we'll get a random take like blocked
Yeah.
because of a clavicle. Like it's so strange.
That is strange. But
It makes me think it's not a human doing it. That it's like
That's what I
it has to just be like a bot that sees like something that looks like
that much flesh color,
Yeah.
it's got to be nudity.
She's
Yeah,
naked.
exactly.
Yeah. But then why isn't that then flagging those bigger creators? Is that because of how many followers they
But
have?
the thing is, I think with all that sort of stuff, especially with Meta, is that to actually speak to a real person would be near impossible.
near impossible. I
So,
agree.
Yeah, like I've got almost 5,500 followers on Instagram, but can't start a broadcast channel. Like some people have 1,500 and they can, but no one seems to know why. and I'm trying to talk to someone. You just can't talk to them.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
When we were still doing the audio podcast, before Spotify announced that they were going to remove that playlist feature, I got an email from them and they were like, oh, we want to invite you to like a networking event down in Sydney. We were living in the Gold Coast at the time. And I was like, fuck it, I'll fly down. So I did like a 24-hour trip. I just like flew down, went to this like networking
At your own
event.
expense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my own expense. It was just like $100 flight from the Gold Coast or whatever. So I get down there and I've got like no idea what to expect. And it's in like the Spotify office and they've got canapes and there's influencers and stuff. And I was like, okay, it's a little bit fancy, whatever. And then they spent the entire time talking about upgrades to the Spotify like platform and then just like how to promote your show on TikTok. And they had 3 different panels of podcasts and they were all talking about like, we blew up on TikTok and it's really good. TikTok is very important to your show. And it was like the same thing again and again and again.
Spotify pushing TikTok.
And
how weird.
I was sitting there in the crowd just being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you talking about someone else's platform at your like publicity event thing? It was very strange, but I met some cool people and I was like, oh, well, that's fine. And I went home and then about 2 months later, there was a big expose about like Spotify lays off like 5,500 people worldwide and they shut down that Sydney office. I don't even think it exists anymore. And like all of the people that I spoke to, the people that like invited me to
They're
it,
not there.
they don't work there anymore. Emails don't exist. They're just gone. So like,
So what was the mentality? Was it because they wanted people to go to use TikTok more than Instagram? Like,
it was when they announced the push into video, it was like, the networking event was tied into that. So it was a way for them to spruik what they were doing and then like loop in podcasters and stuff. But the advice, the stuff that they were trying to give to other creators, people like me, was like, get on TikTok, push your stuff on TikTok. And I was like, aren't we talking about podcasts and audio and a music
And
app?
we reached out directly to team members there to ask, like, how does one, find virality within your tech? Like, every single platform has a way to promote yourself within said platform. YouTube, Instagram. What's Spotify's? Like, how do we get on the recommended podcast? So, for example, on Spotify, it'll say, you listen to this, here's all these podcasts that are just like this. Yeah. We reached out and we're like, well, we've seen creators with hundreds of thousands of followers that's not working for. So what is that? How do we get it to work? How do we get on it?
and they just couldn't tell you.
They said improve our logo or something like that, which was fair criticism, and we did, but it wasn't about promoting within their platform. So
I kind of feel like they put all of their eggs in the Joe Rogan's
think
basket
so.
and the rest was an afterthought. And that potentially is where they lost the budget to have those offices.
I completely agree. I feel like it was a short-sighted... Well, not even short-sighted. Like, they made the biggest move possible, but then left this, like, yawning gap at, like, the medium to small level.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I would think that you build up from the foundation to eventually get to a point where you can get the bigger guys to come in because you've already built this, like, build this big base. But they were just like, we'll get the whale, everything else will come.
Which I guess... how long has that been now? Like 18 months or something?
I feel like 2 years, maybe, I think,
And has it worked for them? They're still the number one sort of streaming platform. I'm not sure.
Yes, it depends on how you measure success, because they've never made a profit, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not as successful. They're very much a successful software.
And they've cornered the market. Like,
and they have a great niche, I think, as
like,
well.
I mean, like, I can sit here and talk shit all day, and I will. But
We're still mad.
But at the end of the day, like, I'm a premium Spotify subscriber, right? And I don't use any of the other like streaming services, so like I can acknowledge my own hypocrisy
You do
there.
use YouTube Premium.
Well, that's true, correct? Yeah,
I just pay for it.
Yeah, so like they've monopolized the space, and these are the type of things that happen when you have a monopoly. Like, they can just do whatever the fuck they want.
And there are other, like, I think Tidal still exists. There are other platforms out there.
Apple Music is a big one, yeah.
Well, Apple, look, this shows you something. Apple have the users. They couldn't eat into that gap enough, into that market.
Yeah.
It's a similar sort of scenario. I don't know if you remember, but with Google, they tried to do Google Circles.
Yes.
I remember, yeah.
Right? Now, if Google can't get into that market, then who's going to get into it? So there are some that are just basically too hard to infiltrate
Yeah.
Too big to fail.
Absolutely.
until TikTok comes along.
That's right.
It changes everything.
That's right. Yeah,
Do you guys use TikTok?
we
Yes.
do, but it's a hard thing to figure out.
We don't do well with our content on TikTok.
Yeah.
I think
Paige has the TikTok expertise. I am steadfastly too old and cantankerous to kind of make it work.
The
So.
thing is that I used TikTok for a while a few years ago. The thing I liked about it is you don't have to overthink the process with it. Like, hello, buddy. With like a lot of other, say, like you've got to sort of follow a formula of how you post and blah blah blah. But I feel with TikTok you can kind of throw shit at a wall and that worked and that didn't. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, you can just ditch it.
For sure.
So I don't think that people look at your overall page like, yeah, you can kind of just throw ideas at it
Yeah.
and something might stick.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Nothing's stuck, but
I don't know. I would kind of find a way to like clip up stuff from our episodes with the mindset of like, I'll get something that's like general purpose that'll do well as like a short, a reel, a TikTok. Short form video should be universal across the platforms, but the algorithms don't treat it that way.
No.
So like, I'll post the same video to those three things and like it might do well on reels. It'll suck shit on TikTok, and then like YouTube, it'll just like disappear into the ether.
sometimes
so,
it
like,
goes well on like shorts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never
Sometimes it
posted on
doesn't.
there really, but yeah, that's a different one as well.
I mean, I just like to build up stuff so that the channel looks full and looks busy. And there was a big like shorts thing at the bottom, and I was like, well, maybe I post some shorts, whatever. And like, we're not getting crazy views or anything, but for people who use it, like they might see it. So it's cool to have stuff on there.
Yeah, with the TikTok thing, I haven't used it for ages, but I had like a personal one that had significant followers, like 15,000 followers, and I tried to shoehorn that into the podcast.
Yeah. No.
Like, it was just me trying to be funny, and I built up a little following, and then I'm like, okay, and now we're going to have this person talking
Yeah.
for 35 seconds about that, and it just tanked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that and in hindsight, I should have started a fresh one because the people that were interested in me being a dickhead weren't interested in people talking seriously. I've learnt that lesson.
Apparently, like then using that to cross promote the others, that will work though.
Potentially.
Interesting.
But this is the other thing. I haven't posted for 18 months or whatever, so that account sits dormant. So if I even post the old content that I used to post, would that find an audience? Has that changed the algorithms? Fuck, who knows?
I don't know.
It's really strange. It's hard to keep up with, and I think Owen said it earlier. Like the second you start chasing algorithms is when it becomes miserable. It's not about making the content anymore.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of like, because I work on the show full time, you know, and I'm trying to kind of like increase our profile and make our stuff look as slick as possible. And I would find myself like just getting kind of lost in the weeds of like trying to create the perfect reel or like trying to figure out like what would do well, and then it would do fine or less than fine. And then I'd be like, man, this time is better spent like writing good notes for a good episode, or like, you know what I mean? Like doing the stuff that actually has value. Like as much as that stuff can pop off and can get people to look at what you're doing, like I don't know what the retention rate is, you know, like
Conversion rate.
That's
conversion
yeah,
rate. Yes.
absolutely.
Like, do they become subscribers? Will they join the Patreon? I don't fucking know.
Do they click through? Yeah, I
But
just
I would rather spend time on the people who have already like subscribed to the show and service them because they're paying us money and they clearly enjoy what we're doing.
But,
So
and this is definitely something that I think in the last few years people have started to understand. And when you're talking about, say, like Instagram, for instance, it's the engaged audience rather than the number of followers.
Yeah.
And like if you've got, and you see it all the time, people might have 30,000 followers, right? It's great, and these people have followed them. But if you get fuck all interaction, it means that they're not that engaged. So you're better off having 5,000 that are going to always
react and interact.
and ride with you and talk and share it and that sort of thing.
yeah,
Well, I think it's like not to algorithm chase, but I believe that if 10% of your followers aren't interacting with the content within the first 10 minutes, like it's like 10-10 or something, the algorithm won't then push it to a wider audience. It'll just that's it.
But I feel like they move those goalposts.
And they
Oh,
move
all
those
the time.
goalposts all the time.
You don't know.
And that's exactly
yeah.
right.
And like Paige and I have talked about how we go like making this like a sustainable thing because, like the dream is that eventually we can both work on it full time and start splitting some of the admin and really kind of just like devoting all of our energy to the show. And to do that, we're not talking like crazy numbers. Like if we had like 500 people on the Patreon, 1,000 people on the Patreon, we'd be cruising.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
sure.
So like
1,000 true fans model is what the whole Patreon thing's built on.
we don't need
1,000 of our closest friends.
like we don't need 1 million followers, and we're not chasing that clout. We're not chasing that virality. We just want to be able to like
Chat about
music and do a cool show that people want. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, I'm sure there's lots of people with similar goals. So like we're not
sort of the same.
Yeah, we're not alone in that. But I mean, like, it does kind of bring you back down to earth when you think that like the goal is like so modest and.
It is. No, it's true. It is true. And that's the thing. But it's really hard for any artist, and look, I'm calling sort of the podcast game art, it's like to get paid for your craft.
There's an art to it.
Creative, yeah.
One artist to another. There's an art to it.
We're all artists here. Just talking
Artists.
bullshit artists. Yeah. No, but like it is very hard to sort of make your passion into full-time sustainable
Oh, totally.
thing. And like, I don't really have a plan. You seem like you're spending a lot more time on this full time. Do you have a plan? Do you have steps and a process you want at goals or any of that?
Plan seems like too strong a word.
Yes.
I have a hope that the amount of time and effort that I put into it can't be for nothing.
Okay.
But
prayer.
I worry the most that it's just a saturation problem.
Yeah.
That there's just so much content, so many podcasts, so many people doing similar type things that like everyone's trying to get their tiny little slice.
Yes.
And it's hard to fight with the big boys who take all of the slice at the top. So
It's like an MLM,
yeah.
What's that? I don't know what that is.
pyramid scheme.
Oh, okay. Right.
So anyone who starts in the company at the beginning will make infinite amount of money the more people that join the company.
Yeah.
But everyone else is down at the bottom fighting for scraps.
But so then my mindset is similar to yours, where I'm like, you just keep putting the content out and you just keep doing it.
That's
Because,
all
like,
you can do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these other people aren't going to be there in the foreseeable future. But it is hard, and it's a little bit not demoralising, but sometimes it's hard to swallow when you push so hard and you just don't get the numbers, and then
Yeah, it can be
I
frustrating.
start to think, well, you can't worry about the numbers. You got to worry about the people that are watching.
Yeah,
Yes,
I agree.
That's pretty much the conversation we have. Like we kind of check in, every couple of months, like how we feeling, like how's things traveling, and like we try not to get bogged down in like the views or the numbers. It's like, have the guests been good? Have the episodes been good?
Is the feedback good?
Is the feedback
Yeah,
good?
for sure.
Are we getting cool new opportunities? You know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff is like where we want to put our time and energy and our focus. Because as soon as you start chasing the numbers, like you're fucked.
It's not fun anymore.
Yeah, for sure. There's people that I've had on in the past that have done really well with the numbers game, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to have them back on just for another 7,000
Yeah,
views, right?
yeah.
But it would be cool. But
It'd be
Totally.
nice.
I will have him back on eventually, but I'm just going to wait. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and I see people do this all the time with sort of like Instagram Reels or whatever. You can see that they've done something, it seems to work, and they fucking throw everything out, and they're like, this is my new way forward.
They
Yeah.
just start doing like the same joke in different outfits for like months, and you're like, okay, yeah, it was
We
pretty
get it.
funny the first time. It's like a dad joke.
Yeah.
Maybe specifically my dad. He'll just say it again and again until you laugh.
But yeah, I think like the consistency and when you've got the mindset. But the thing is with here in Australia is the audience is small.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the really hard thing. You break down how many people are watching video podcasts,
Totally.
how many people are interested in that content. You know, like if you're in a niche area, you're in a niche area.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm always struck by though is like we go to a lot of shows, right? So, the artists that we platform on the show that we get on for episodes, like I'll usually try and go to their shows if they're on tour or whatever. And I'll stand in a room like at the Forum and there'll be, a couple of 100,000 people. And I'm like, how do I get like 10% of the people in this room to like listen to my show? You know what I mean? And I've started thinking about going back to like
Handing out flyers
street
on the
team,
street.
physical stuff. Like, do I make flyers?
Like maybe going back to the roots of old school marketing is actually the way to pierce through these days because there's so much
Yeah, like
noise
I
online.
You know what? From people, you're a bit younger than me, but I'm 42. But I think from that aspect, people that are 30s, 40s, 50s probably would like an A5 flyer that you've handed to them that you've printed at, Officeworks on a green piece of paper, and they're more likely to put that in their pocket and actually...
There is a lot of respect for that kind of DIY in music, so it feels like it could translate to something like a podcast as well.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like with my scenario, I've got a lot of people that are like, oh man, it's cool, you had Bias B on, or you had Trem on, that's awesome. Because they follow the Instagram.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't watch podcasts.
Oh, yeah, we have
I don't
that.
watch that at all.
Yeah.
But that's cool that you got to hang out with them. Like, yeah, that is cool.
It was really cool.
Can you chuck me a YouTube view, please? Like, goddamn.
This is the thing. Like, so when you talk about a small audience, we've got a small audience, and then that audience may not vibe with that kind of content.
Yeah, totally.
Some people don't have 2 hours to sit down twice a week and watch me and someone else talk shit, or you talk to someone who's touring. They appreciate what you do, but they don't watch it. So the audience gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I've also worried, like, because we focus on alternative music, to kind of loop back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Like, we do cover a wide range of music. So, like, we'll have, a metal band on one week, have a hardcore band on, we'll have, like, a poppy alternative band the next, you know what I mean? Like, I listen to lots of different music. I'm interested in all sorts of different genres, but I can kind of appreciate that not everyone is the same. So, like, if someone finds our show because we have, like, Beck from Terminal Sleep on, which is like our most watched episode, but they only really fuck with metallic hardcore, and then we have Emmy from Red Hook the next week, and they're like, "What the fuck is this shit? I don't want to listen to that."
Yeah.
Then maybe they don't come back. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, do I want to be just a metal show? No.
It's
like,
excuse me. It's definitely a hard one. Like,
Yeah,
I get that a lot because I try and have a really diverse range. And people are like, mate, more graphers. We don't want to listen to this person talk about their story of fucking something else. And you're like, dude,
I'm sure they're really enjoying this platform content.
who knows? They're going to love it next week when I've got a makeup influencer on. But anyway, like, I want to keep changing it and keep people guessing. And the thing is, when you do a lot of content, right, when you put it out there a lot, and I've got the mindset to do 2 a week, if you didn't like Tuesday, or you might like Thursday.
Yeah.
And if you didn't like Thursday, you'll like Tuesday next week, and you'll get over it,
Yeah.
And my idea is, like, that's why we put in so much effort to, like, be consistent with the schedule, is that, like, if people find the show, they can at least know that there's the weekly show with Paige and I, that's new music. So if you want new music, you watch that. If you want long-form artist interviews, every Friday there's going to be one of those, and the catalog starts to build up on YouTube, so they can scroll back and they can find the shit that they're interested in. It's evergreen, right? Like,
that is definitely the thing.
Go back and watch it.
And I find that with my stuff. Sometimes you won't have an episode that goes bananas, but you still get 2,000 views that week because people are watching other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, and I think YouTube is clogged up with a lot of people making stuff that is relevant to right now.
Yeah.
Which is just blocking up the servers in 2 years' time, because who's going to watch what Carmela Harris or what?
I was
do you
just
know what I
gonna
mean?
say,
Think about how much
yeah.
fucking P Diddy shit there is out there at the moment that no one's going to care about, like, in a few years, because it was what he said today or something,
Yeah, or Ariana Grande's last cheating scandal, or like, it's essentially like it's become what the trash magazines at the checkout at the grocery store in a lot of ways. I feel like that's what TikTok is for me. It's like anytime I want drama or crap, I can just go in there.
The thing is with TikTok is that it never ends, and I know you could say that with most other stuff, but it could get your attention for ages.
Absolutely.
You could sit there and scroll to the end of time, and they've designed it that way. It's weaponized to just, like, keep you hooked in the whole time. And the more you use it, the better it knows, like, what you're pausing on, what you're skipping through. So, like, yeah.
My partner, she has never owned a horse, nor has she had any intentions to own a horse.
Okay.
But on TikTok, she finds these people, and now she obviously liked horses for a bit,
Farriers.
and now she's into
Horse talk.
horse. Yeah,
Hell
but
yeah.
it finds stuff that you probably didn't even realize that you knew that you wanted to watch.
I am weirdly into watching farriers clean horseshoes. And
That's
like,
a niche. Yeah,
it's just like a satisfying thing to watch. And my best friend is like ride and die, literally a horse girl. So like I've never known, and I'll just message her and be like, "Oh, look how messed up this cyst is on this one horse," and she's like, "What is wrong with you?"
The one thing I do appreciate it though is that, like, you know, we come from like a subcultural space, right? Which is like a little bit outside of the mainstream. Like we're into kind of like different types of eclectic stuff, music and graph culture and whatever. But like TikTok is like so perfectly designed to like find some like weird niche you never knew existed and then just like thrust it into your life. Like remember there was that drama about that chick who was like going around and removing like bee
Yes.
like the beehives and stuff.
The woman who did it with the Save the Bee lady?
Yeah. And then there was like rival like bee influencers that were like,
There's a
she
whole bee
sucks, like
community.
she did
It's
it the
called
wrong way.
bee
And I was like,
talk.
I never would have guessed that there was like bee talk drama out there in the world. Without TikTok to like throw that stuff at me, I wouldn't know.
But it goes to show you that if you do something well, there is kind of an audience for everything. There's
Absolutely.
people-
Kind of, yeah.
I've watched people on TikTok build a fence. And then that guy's like, and if you want me to build your fence, I'll come back. And you're like, what? You know, like.
You ever watch pool cleaning? Oh my God, I love
that's
pool
a thing
cleaning
as well.
videos.
No, there you go. Yeah. But I guess and we live in this day and age where, you know, you can just watch whatever you want.
Yeah.
But that platform scares me because it just can take people's souls.
I mean, I have ADHD and it's made my attention span significantly worse. And in COVID, like it was like a full blown addiction for sure. Because
was
it was
pretty
just
bad.
like, it's so good for a crap attention span. But if you're watching these tiny little videos, if you watch hundreds of them, how much of that are you really consuming?
And
You know?
I honestly, and like I said, I don't use it anymore, but I felt like it made me stupider. Like I feel like you literally start watching stuff and you're like, and it made me almost when I would spend a little bit of time on TikTok, I'm like, wow, I'm kind of concerned of the future of the planet because there's a lot of shit stuff out there and just stupidity.
I mean, I don't use TikTok that much and I'm predominantly like promoting the show on Instagram. And I'll have moments pretty consistently, like once or twice a week, where I'll be like at my desk doing work, Google Docs, forms, and I'm like, oh, I need to go check this artist's profile for this link or whatever. And then 10 minutes later,
You're still on
I'm sitting there watching stories, and then I'm like, oh, I need to get off my phone, put my phone away, go back to the Google Docs. And I'm like, fuck, I was supposed to get that link all the time. And I'm just like, I'm a 36-year-old man. Like, what the hell is wrong with me?
Yeah.
But that's they've designed it exactly that way. You click on this because it gains your attention, and then you're watching this, and they know how to hold your attention.
Yeah.
I think obviously Instagram's extremely threatened by TikTok, and that Reels is where they are trying, and I think they're getting better at that, for lack of a better term.
For sure.
But no one seems to be really able to take that sort of TikTok crown away. It seems to be like really holding it at the moment.
And I think like in the US too, you can see that they are like all the like jingoistic like China propaganda stuff aside, like they are so threatened by something that isn't like an American proprietary thing that is like so good and so effective. So they're like, we're gonna ban it unless we can buy it.
Did ban it.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few people. Yeah.
I mean, does that impact us though? Didn't they ban it in India? That's like a whole, billion people that technically aren't using it.
For sure.
I don't know.
I don't know. I've been on the internet long enough to know that there's never really banning anything on the internet.
Black market talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But and that would be an interesting case study if a few cities or states in the US did ban it. Then obviously there's workarounds and kids will figure out a way to do it.
And will they? Like, do they go and get like a Tor account just to watch TikToks? Like,
Or like a VPN or some shit. I don't know.
Like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've got social media needs to change because it isn't great. Like there's never the consumers' welfare thought about at all.
No,
Because at the end of the day, they're a business, right? And they don't necessarily have to have like the best intentions when it comes to like community response or impacts.
or just
like
ethics in general.
yeah, like at the end of the day, like that is a legislative thing. That's for like governments to step in and be like, okay, you're doing X, Y, Z with these
Shady.
caveats, and that space is so like unregulated that they're just like doing whatever the fuck they want, and they have been for like a decade. So
Yeah, and then you look at, say, Meta gets threatened by Instagram, they just buy it.
Yeah.
You know, so again, the people with the power and the money just keep controlling
Yeah.
the whole sort of thing.
yeah, I will say like Australia does seem to be kind of unique in the world for like pushing back on certain things. Like
that's true.
They like. I'm not going to get out here and support Murdoch Media,
was gonna say.
but Murdoch were kind of pushing back against Google for sucking up a lot of like referrals to like news and stuff, and they were like, if you want to be here, like you have to pay, and Google were like, not sure about that actually.
Yeah.
So
Didn't Murdoch also buy
Everything? All of it?
MySpace though?
yeah, he was involved in that. Yeah,
He bought it for
Hey.
like hundreds of millions.
I had no
at the wrong
idea.
time and tried to bring it back and it was cool.
After
Yeah.
it was already dead. I didn't know that.
yeah.
But he's got that much money, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, but I just mean that like there's a little bit of a pushback in Australia in terms of like legislators and like media culture that they recognize that like the American tech industry shouldn't really be able to just like run rampant over everyone, and that like there are some kind of things that we can control in
We
our
saw
own
that
country.
with the news stuff that they tried to do.
Yeah,
And Australia, yeah, they did stand up and say, no, this is content. But then you look at that and say, how much is that profitable for people who are the journalists who are writing the article? You know, yeah.
And there is a real concern for the monopoly that Murdoch Media have in this country as well. Like, they own everything.
and they influence everything. That's the more important thing.
But I feel like, and I don't want to fuck around with politics too
No,
much.
no.
Here in Australia, I don't think that there's necessarily a political agenda. When in the US, there definitely is.
Oh, for sure.
Fox
yeah.
is this, and this, and CBS is this, and there's like they lean left or right in whatever they are. I think here
That's
they just
true.
want to tell you what to buy, and they don't really care about the politics behind
That's
it.
true.
That's my thought process. I don't know.
Yeah, I would disagree slightly, particularly when it comes to Murdoch. Like he definitely has a political agenda and has pushed that for many decades. But
I've just noticed that
Yeah.
the major like news outlets will just kind of endorse whoever's in the seats, whoever's got most seats in
Okay.
Parliament. So like right now, I feel like previously things have been quite pro Labor, but they'll switch that up if it becomes like we previously had a, you know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
No, I know
I don't know
exactly what
shit
you
about
mean.
politics. So.
What's interesting is like we moved here from Queensland, so like we're born and bred in Queensland. We were living.
Whereabouts Queensland?
So we both grew up in the same town in central Queensland.
It's called
and
Emerald.
Yeah.
Central Queensland.
It's a coal mining town.
Yeah, I was gonna say like if you're in Queensland, you want to be near the beach. Central Queensland.
It's like the dead center.
No
Yeah.
beach.
So-
no beach around.
We grew up in a small town. It's like 10, 15,000 people, waxes and wanes depending on the mines.
Very
right?
FIFO based. Yeah.
But like I'm a couple of years older than Paige, so like my best friend was like her neighbor, and she would play with my best mate's like sister. So we
Sounds like a small town thing.
yeah, we all kind of knew the same people, and I eventually moved to Brisbane. Like after high school, Paige did the same thing, and then we eventually kind of met
Got
through
to go to
that.
Brisbane or the Gold Coast.
Yeah,
And we
basically.
did both.
And we
So-
did both. But yeah, we moved from Queensland to Victoria December last year. So we've been here almost a year. And it is kind of crazy to just like actually live in another state and see like state politics from a different kind of
It
lens.
is really
Because
crazy.
Queensland is like incredibly conservative. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to piss off the whole of Queensland, but can be quite racist as well.
Absolutely.
In parts, like
Yeah.
definitely. I
Absolutely.
witnessed some shit when I was up there, even on the Gold Coast, of some stuff that people were saying to bar staff, and I'm like,
It's
dude,
horrendous, eh?
Yeah.
we so like we come from central Queensland. When we got married, it was in the middle of COVID and we couldn't go overseas for a honeymoon. So we got a juicy van and we were like, all right, we'll drive up to Cairns. We'll fuck around in the Whitsundays for a little bit. We'll come back. And it's so crazy. You like go up the Bruce Highway and there's like a very definite point where it starts to become like North Queensland out of central Queensland. And there's just One Nation billboards. Just
And they get
everywhere.
more and more.
And you're like, oh, we've hit that part of Queensland.
But at the
There
same
we
time,
go.
I don't know a single One Nation voter from our hometown either. So it's weird.
But I think it's kind of like the people in certain states in the US that vote for Trump, they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
They just do it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I think that's the thing is
here we are talking politics.
Well, yeah.
When we
but
said we
it's-
wouldn't.
I'll defend we can talk politics because we're talking about you moving interstate.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's super interesting. But now you live in Reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a free thinking kind of place.
Yeah, definitely.
And
for
it must
sure.
be totally different to Central.
It is. Yeah, it's a completely different vibe, and I don't know, like we love it here. Like that's one of the reasons why we moved to Melbourne. But it is just a strange vibe to kind of see the difference in just how it's talked about, how people respond to it, the stuff you get in the mail, the letters. You know, the way they're trying to sell you stuff is
I
different.
think it's interesting, like, you know, people do say things like, you know, Queensland is, well, because Queensland statistically is a conservative state. But I do, growing up recently and how intense politics have become, I've watched people get so much more pushed down a right-wing path because of those kinds of statements, because they're like, well, this is the only community I have now, you know?
But the internet exists.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I have hope in them. I have faith that like some of these people I've known since I was in high school will just like wake up one day and realize they're assholes now. Like be better.
But this is the thing. So you guys showed enough nous and gusto to get out of the hometown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people that stay exactly where they grew up, and I'm not having a go at where you're from, but a lot of people that stay in their little small towns don't seem to have a more worldly view of things.
I
Yeah.
mean, just through virtue of not living a very diverse life.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also that they just probably don't have that strive or ambition for anything else interesting and creative, and they're happy with the world that they're given, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But people that get out of those smaller towns and go to the big city, even if it is only for 10 years, whatever, you've got a more well-rounded...
There's a different
and
perspective.
yeah, exactly. Different
for
perspective.
sure.
Yeah, we were talking about this morning, actually, that, like, you know, living in Brisbane for as long as we did and then now living in Melbourne, like, there is definitely this attitude of, like, if you only grow up in the cities, in the capital cities, you have a certain idea about how people in the country, you know, like, think and behave. And, like, I think we both kind of understand that it's a little bit more complex than that.
It
and,
is,
like...
yeah.
You know, we grew up with a lot of people that, you know, don't share our political views or whatever, but at the same time, like, I don't think they're inherently bad people. It's
Some
just,
of them are. To be fair.
But I guess some people just have never had their eyes opened up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like they might go to Brisbane or they might go to Sydney, but do they spend a period of time in Melbourne or have they been in Adelaide? Or where do they even go
Yeah.
to see different lifestyles?
Totally.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think the difference is that, like, you just can't talk down to people, particularly about, you know, the town they grew up in or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta like meet people where they're at, and the job of politics is to, like, you know, build a coalition and to, like, convince people to help you out. You don't get there by being like, everyone's a racist, so we're not going to talk to them. It's like, well, shouldn't you be trying to make them not racist?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think the main
Isn't that
thing
the
I
job?
hear is like, well, they're all uneducated, and like, as someone who went to public school in rural Queensland, yeah, we fucking are. Send funding there,
Yeah.
please, for the love of God. We need education in rural Australia.
Yeah, but I think also it's an environmental thing because it's hard for you to think outside the square when you're surrounded by other people that are like, no, well, this
The
is how it
feedback
is.
loop,
Yeah,
yeah.
You're in an echo chamber
sure.
of political views or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's hard for those people to change. I think I often think I'm like, man, it'd be such an easier life if I just was born in a country town and just had a simple job and lived there and just, you know, had a little farm. But you know, like that's not me. But I'm like,
Yeah.
in a way, I kind of envy those people. I'm like, that's a chill existence.
I mean, that could have been me. Like, I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farmer. He worked, 40, 45, 50 hours a week or whatever he was doing. Like, he
But
worked.
that's what filled his cup.
Yeah.
You know, like that's not what really fills our cup, and obviously yours. Like,
Yeah. So when you said I want to be a music writer to your farmer dad, he would have been like,
what?
Honestly, like, my dad's super chill.
Yeah, he's
and there was never any, like, pressure. I think from, like, a very young age, I was, like, super nerdy. So I'd be, like, running around, like, barbecues and stuff, and be like, I'm going to be an astronaut. And they're like, okay, good on you, Owen. But, like, I was never like, I'm going to be a farmer like my dad. You know what I mean? Like, it was never anything that I, like, saw in my life. And I think he knew that. But, like, I love where I grew up, and I appreciate everything that they gave me the privilege to kind of be able to try and make this thing work. You know what I mean? Like, but it's hard to.
Do you find that like older people don't even know really what a podcast is?
My nan says it with a V, vodcast.
Oh, Nan.
What are you spending all your time and money on a vodcast? I'm like, what is that, like vodka podcast?
Honestly, that's sick because
Thanks,
it is
Nan.
video.
Yes.
So like
She
vodcast
figured
is
it
the nil.
out, I
She
guess.
figured it
Oh,
out.
it kind of is a vodcast.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm going with that. That's sick.
Yeah. When I first got this space here, some people, because we're in an industrial area, some people who are sort of tradie dudes from a neighbouring property, they came in and they must have seen me and a few mates like renovating it. Like, what are you guys doing over here? And I'm like, I'm doing podcasts. And they both kind of looked at each other like, what's that? And he goes,
Yeah.
you're going to have strippers? And I'm like, well, nah, not really. He goes, oh, if you've got strippers, then we'll come after work. And I'm like, no, it's not a bikie clubhouse.
No,
It's,
yeah.
they didn't really get
They
it.
truly thought it was something like a bikie clubhouse.
I guess so.
That's
I don't
so
know.
interesting.
I don't know. But
That's
some
so
people
funny.
don't, like, even people, you guys are a bit younger, right? But even people that are my age in their 40s, some people are like, I've never listened to a podcast in my life.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just that generational sort of, if you're not into it, you're just not going to be
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, like my parents
Absolutely.
like just won't listen to it. Like they support us, they love us, but like they're not
going
they're not going to listen to it.
Yeah, I think there's a certain age gap where it kind of makes sense to people and some people, but even like 15 years ago, like you said podcast, people were like, what is it? It's like the radio, but
Yeah.
it's not. Like, I don't know. Like, it is a new medium.
I had a mate who was like really on the ball, and like when we first became friends in like the early 2010s, he'd be trying to send me like podcast recommendations, and I'd be like, man, fuck off. Like, I just want to listen to my music. Why are you sending me all this like radio talk back chit chat bullshit? What's this? And it wasn't until like years later that I eventually started listening to like a couple of political podcasts, and I was like, oh, this is actually great. And
Okay, heavy music is something that I'm not overly familiar with.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm learning, and I do like.
What do you listen to?
I listen to mostly kind of hip hop. That's all
Yeah,
that
cool.
I'm interested in. If you look at my record collection over there's a very diverse range of music.
I'm very impressed by that stat, by
Oh,
the way.
there's more out the back, and there's more at home. Yeah, I'll get
Goals.
there in the end. But yeah, I've
You are a big hip hop fan, also.
yeah, but that's what people and other people say. Oh man, you've got a hip hop podcast. I'm like, no, don't have
Yeah,
a hip hop
no.
podcast. Just talk to some people about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like all sorts of stuff. Man, I even like sort of like indie rock music. Like
Yeah.
everything has its place. You know
Yeah.
what I
For
mean?
sure.
I don't want to get up in the morning, take the dog for a walk, and listen to staunch Aussie hip hop all the time. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I want to listen to something that's not that.
Yeah.
And
Or
yeah.
podcast.
I feel it.
You want to listen to
I don't go down the
Enya?
Enya route
Not
too
me
often.
either.
I don't think about Enya that often. But no, everything has its place. You know what I mean? I love retro sort of stuff. 80s
sure.
and 70s music, even some sort of 60s stuff. I don't really get down with the 90s pop shit too much. But everything kind of has its place.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you stereotype your style of music, I only listen to that, then you're not a very well-rounded individual. I think.
Yeah, I've talked about this on the pod a couple of times with different guests, but I kind of went through a period like coming out of high school in my like late teens, early 20s, started going to hardcore and metal shows, and I was like, I'm only exclusively listening to that sort of music, and I was like immersing myself in the shows and then listening to it in my spare time, and that was kind of the only thing. And then I got to like my mid 20s, like early 2010s, and I was like, I need to like branch out a little
Diversify.
bit. I feel like I'm kind of a boring person. Like I feel like I need to kind of like
You like what you like.
yeah, and I've got like a naturally kind of inquisitive mind, right? So I was just like, all right, I'm going to find some hip hop that I'm into. I'm going to listen to some classic shit. I'll listen to some new shit. I want to listen to more indie rock. I want to listen to some country. And I really just tried to dabble in as much as I could to kind of like round out my palette. Some of it's for me, some of it's not, but like try
that's
it out.
Yeah, and that's totally it. And I think if you speak to any musical artist, 99% of them will say, I listen to various genres. I've got an eclectic
Absolutely.
taste
Yeah.
because they're interesting people that like music.
Yeah.
I very rarely think you'll find anyone who says, I only listen to the kind of music that I make. Sure, there's a few. That's the vast majority, I reckon.
Yeah, I
I've not
completely
met
agree.
any.
I completely agree,
Yeah.
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 So
every artist that we've had in is like oh, I actually prefer to listen to not the genre of music I make because it gets a little annoying.
Well, with the heavy music, though, it is something that you've got to be in the right state of mind. You don't want to be listening to that when you go to sleep. Well, maybe some people do, but, it's
Maybe some people do.
Yeah, but it's like everything. It's got its sort of
It's
time and place.
good gym music.
There you go. Yeah.
For sure.
Especially with like Australian music as well. Like the community is relatively small. A lot of the bigger and more successful acts generally kind of know each other. They play on similar bills, right? And I've had some conversations where they talk about like, I don't want to listen to my mate's band's latest record because I don't want to jack their shit for our record. Like if they have musical overlap, right? If they come from the same scenes, if they're doing the same kind of thing, you don't want to
subliminally absorb a riff or something.
You don't want to be too heavily influenced by what your mates are doing. You kind of want to do what you're doing, so you'll purposefully go left of field to kind of like make sure that your creative stuff is like pure to what you want to do.
For sure.
So there's a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I think you need to keep your mind open.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And, you can have what you like. I'm sure that most people, when they just grab a Spotify playlist, they'll go to, the same sort of things to start what they want just because that's what you gravitate towards. But I think it's important to just, to spice it up a little
For sure, yeah.
I mean, on average, how much music do you reckon you listen to a week, Maloney?
I listen to a bit, but I listen to probably more podcasts, and that's when I'm having my downtime.
Yeah.
I've also got a kid who's 5 years old, so it's hard to kind of like, he wants to watch people play Mario and shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that sort of stuff gets hijacked. There is, but look, I don't get as much time as I'd like to, and I don't drive as much. See, that's where a lot of people consume music,
Yeah. See, we both work from home, so like we don't have a commute. I take Reese for a walk of an afternoon, and that's usually like my podcast time. Like I've got a couple of pods that I like to listen to just for, my own kind of like leisure. But when I'm working, I have like a master playlist of new releases that's all kind of like research and groundwork for future episodes, guests, whatever. So like I'm listening to 25, 30 hours of new music every single week.
That's a lot.
So like
Your ears need a rest, man.
Yeah. And like
But he loves it.
Yeah.
and I mean like I don't say that as like a brag thing. Like it's just like
you do.
that's the kind of stuff that I'm doing to kind of like keep up with all of the music that's coming out, to find the stuff that is good, to find
In
the
your
stuff
opinion.
that in my opinion, to find the stuff that I want to shout out and talk about. But like that's kind of a necessary thing for what we're doing because there's just so much of it.
Yeah, and people get a bit, what's the word, disenfranchised with current music that they're hearing when they don't dig. They go, music now sucks. It's like, because you're listening to fucking Fox FM.
Yeah,
It sucks.
yeah.
Good music's out there, but you have to put in the time and effort to go and find it.
Yeah.
Or you've got to dig
Or
deeper.
you could listen to our podcast.
Indeed.
Where we do it for you.
You could, but like people need to start to think
Yeah.
because we've lost the art of digging, like,
Everything's
metaphorically.
fed to you.
Exactly.
That's
So
true.
you have to go out of those algorithms. And then this is another thing, like with the physical music that I've got, I hold on to stuff like that because you know that some of that stuff will never be on streaming platforms.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I think that the resurgence of CDs, there'll be so much stuff that is lost and people can never find because of they might have made this when streaming wasn't a thing. You've got to get that person who's in the band to agree with that person, and then the master's owned by them, and they're going to put them, and the splits are going to happen. So it's just too hard. Basket never ends up on streaming.
Yeah.
So the physical
true.
stuff needs to exist.
Yeah, there's a really good Instagram account called the Oz Hardcore Digital Archive, and they're basically doing like archivist work of going through and finding like old demos, EPs, stuff that was like put up on MySpace and then just like kind of lost to time, and they're like finding all of this stuff and then putting it up on the DSPs.
What's a DSP? I don't know what that
Digital streaming platform.
Oh, okay, on a
to,
DSP.
to use the parlance of our times.
Okay, right.
I don't know what
But
he
hang
meant.
on, there's legal ramifications here because no one owns them. They can claim them, or
No, I think they're reaching out to like they're finding people who are in those bands because they're usually just like local bands and in like places in Australia, right? So they're like, do you know a guy who knows a guy who was in this band? Can you get me a copy of that demo? Are they chill with us throwing it up on Spotify for people to listen to, which I think is just like a cool project because a lot of that stuff, is kind of just lost to time if people don't have the physicals.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you. One of the benefits of us not being shackled to Spotify exclusively and being able to go do YouTube was the idea of like, I can put stuff in the show that isn't just on Spotify now.
Yeah, because there is stuff that's Bandcamp exclusive.
Yeah, so much like punk music, for
So
example.
you just list that in the description?
Yeah, well, like I can take it, put it up on YouTube, and then, in the newsletter, I'll be like, if you want to stream it, go to Bandcamp. It might not be on the Spotify playlist, but...
What sucks, though, is that we were, for a bit there, kind of a distributor for very underground bands because it can be very difficult to get your music on to Spotify. At least it was for a period of time. So they would just be like, oh, we're having issues with XYZ. Can you guys just post it in your episode and then we'll kind of sub something
we did
in
we did a couple
later,
of premieres. So I would basically just like get the raw audio, chuck it up as like podcast audio. And I would be like, now we're going to listen to this song that's like not even out yet. Here you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I guess that could be an evolution to become somewhat of a label.
Kind
Is that
of.
the idea, potentially?
I mean, if I had
love
the
that.
if I had the time, I would love to do that. I've always wanted to kind of do that, but I think my focus at the moment, the plan that you referred to earlier, is really to kind of get the show to a point where it is a stable, viable thing for us to kind of work on. And then...
A timeline?
No.
Not really.
I would hope it's like a year or two away, but we'll see.
We're actually just discussing before we came here that we want to get like a whiteboard and have like a visual like
a mood board.
yeah, like let's
No,
do.
that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
helps just track like, okay, well, here's some set goals that we want to get through for the next year and how are we tracking towards
But
that.
yeah, we could do a whole other podcast about my like big brain business
He's
schemes
got this like
of,
Excel spreadsheet
of stuff that I want to do, but that's all like pie in the sky shit. Right now I'm like
No, but that's
focused on
cool
like
just
what we're
to
doing.
write that stuff down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Put it,
sure.
like, I haven't done that at all. It was anything in my life. It just kind of happens. But now that I've got a bit older, I'm like, I really need to start to, think about what I'm doing, not just jump on the journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big spreadsheet guy. So, like Paige was saying, like I have a spreadsheet that plans out usually 2 to 3 months in advance of guests, and I have another one that catalogs like upcoming releases, shows, tours, festivals, and I start to like triangulate like, all right, this band's going to be here over these dates. They're going to be in Melbourne on this date. They're going to be in Frankston on this date. Will they be able to come to the studio midway through? Then I got to figure out like, who do I hit up to see what their schedule is to try and get them on the show. And, that's part of just the admin of the show. But I'm trying to do that.
It is definitely a
like,
full-time job,
months
hey?
ahead of time. So
Man, I want to see this spreadsheet.
it's nothing flash, but it's got fancy colours in it.
I just recently, I made one from now until the end of the year of like every day and like just juggling stuff. My partner's gone back to work, my son, all this sort of stuff, but then trying to wedge all that stuff in there. And
Yeah.
full-time work and all that stuff. Man, and it's people
hard.
don't understand how much goes into passion projects and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a full-time
Yeah.
job. And
100%.
I can sometimes get a little bit demoralized when, like
Things don't do as well.
things don't do as well, and like maybe I'm not bringing in, the breadwinner kind of income. Thankfully, Paige does that. But
You just stay pretty.
thank you. But yeah, like it is a lot of work, and like we could definitely do what we're doing and do it as just kind of a whenever we've got time thing.
Nah, that's the wrong idea.
But
No, you have to be consistent with it. Hey.
like we had a conversation when we started, and I was like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do 2 episodes a week. And Paige was like, I don't know if I can commit to that. And I
I'll
was
be
like,
doing one.
and I was like, okay, you can do the weekly show, I'll do the other show, but we're doing 2 episodes a week. And we've mostly stuck to that for nearly 2 years with a few breaks in between.
That's awesome commitment.
Yeah.
Like for sure. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these different podcasts or whatever you want to call them, platform shows, that they lose the consistency, and you lose the consistency, you lose the audience faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you keep that consistency up. The thing is with what we're doing, well, with what you guys do, you do one show together, which makes it easier.
Yes.
I've got every episode's with a guest. If I have a guest pull the pin, then like this week I missed one. Someone was supposed to do it yesterday, cancelled. Next week I've got to scramble to find another one.
Yeah, we do have that, but I guess like that's what makes our main one keep it consistent at the end of the day. But yeah,
So we've done. We've tried to be like flexible with it. So like sometimes Paige is crook, and I'll just like wing it and do the weekly episode like solo.
Struggle.
Nah, it's fine. It's a little bit awkward.
It's
just
not as
kind of like
funny.
I kind of feel like it's definitely not as funny, not as much energy, but like it's mostly just me talking into like the microphone or the camera and being like, okay, cool, this band is good, we're gonna play this song, off we go.
And reading like more the presses, so it becomes like you said earlier, like when you stick to a script too much, it can make it feel too rigid.
Yeah,
and
there's no one to vibe off.
Yeah,
It's hard.
It's so
It's hard
much
to vibe
easier
with
when
yourself.
Yeah, for sure. But you do pretty good.
Yeah, but we've had like people come in and fill in as guest hosts, and we've done a couple of episodes as like guest episodes, but it's just us like talking about albums and stuff. So like we keep it flexible to kind of keep the episode schedule. So like even if we can't get a guest, we'll do something for that bonus episode to kind of just keep things moving.
And maybe I should just talk to myself next week if I can't find
It's
it.
hard.
Why don't you point the camera at the record collection and talk about your records?
I could talk about it. No, well, the idea...
I would watch that.
The idea... Well, yeah, but I'd just get pulled... If I start playing... So I wanted to start playing them, and then everyone's like,
cool.
you can't do that on Instagram, you can't do it on YouTube, it will just get pulled down.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, well, what about if I play stuff that's not on Spotify that didn't get released? So that's my next...
That's your archival.
That's my next idea.
I have some stuff that we can maybe talk about off mic, but I've got an idea for you, my friend.
Inner workings.
Yeah.
Tell people where they can find you guys and how they can best consume you, because there's multiple platforms.
I would say YouTube is the best place. So
Now it is.
now it is.
Yeah.
If you type in the Pitch of Discontent into YouTube, you'll find the channel. It's just the channel name.
Is it? There's nothing else that sort of pops up. That's a nice. You're lucky there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's a unique enough name. Like it's a song lyric that I kind of like borrowed for the name, and it was the name of the newsletter that I originally had. So I've just kind of kept it
I think
consistent.
Pitch would be something that a lot of people have used though.
Yeah.
Well, pitches. I've definitely seen like a lot of other like. I think there's a sports podcast called like The Pitch or something because it's
baseball,
like
yeah.
baseball. Yeah. But no.
No one's
specific-
jacked the full name, so that's good. But yeah, YouTube is the best place to find us. We put all of the full episodes up there. I'm also doing special kind of just like short mini episodes for like tour promo stuff that comes through. And that's usually on the Patreon, which is also patreon.com/tpdpod.
And how much does a Patreon cost?
So the bottom tier is $5 a month.
Which is nothing.
That's pretty good.
And then
Yeah.
we have $10 and $15 a month. So there's 3 tiers, a couple of bonuses and perks and stuff for the higher tiers. But the basic tier gets you access to all the basic content.
Yeah, for sure.
So-
And you can use it to basically just send us music every day, which we do
Yeah.
have patrons that do.
We
which
had
is
this.
fun.
We had this sweet guy kind of subscribe to the Patreon. Shout out Chris, and he's just a dude from Montreal, and he uses the community chat function to just DM me and be like, "Hey man, listen to this." I'm like,
You'd like
"Thanks,
this.
Chris."
You'd
Yeah.
like
Cheers.
this.
So
And
you've
like,
got a community chat in there where people can
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
I really like that. That
Yeah, it's
makes me
cool.
want to almost just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about some of that
Okay.
after we wrap. But
Okay, yeah.
I think
The
I think
insight.
that's
It needs some moderating.
I think that's the next phase for the 3000 podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna need to see you in some sort of membership.
But yeah, to wrap up the promo, the YouTube, Patreon if you want to pay, and then if you want to listen but not watch, Spotify, Apple Music if you're on Apple Music. But yeah, the Pitch of Discontent will get you all of that.
And what if people have music in that heavy space? Can they reach out to you? Like,
Absolutely. Of
Obviously,
course.
not everyone's going to get their head on the show,
Yeah.
but they can try.
They can try. I'm usually pretty busy and lots of stuff scheduled in a couple of weeks or months in advance, but always open to getting emails and listening to new stuff. So you can email me at owen@thepitchofdiscontent.com and yeah, let's chat.
It is interesting with that sort of stuff because I'm reasonably planned out as well. And like, I'll reach out to someone like, hey man, I'd love to get on the podcast. Like, yeah, cool. I can do it Tuesday. You're like, nah, what about Tuesday, December? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like people don't realize you've got to plan shit like this.
Yeah.
for sure.
But also like with that schedule that I was talking about before, like stuff falls through all the time.
So
So
there's
like
still a chance to
I will
slide in.
Yeah, I will like schedule stuff out on the understanding that I've like reached out to their team or their people. I've lined up something
The
for
more
like,
points of contact, the more places that can slip.
Absolutely.
so like
yeah.
in my spreadsheet with my different color codings, I have like stuff that's locked in, stuff that's already recorded, stuff that's tentative, and every now and again like something will fall through and it'll be like that week. And I'm like, fuck, I need to get someone in to do a pod for Friday. And, you know, sometimes I'll reach out to people and just be like, hey, man, do you just want to like bounce in and come do an episode?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm thankful that people, you know, want to do
quite
that
malleable
and
like
have
that, yeah.
good, flexible time.
Yeah, sometimes those happy accidents work where people are, I am just free. But like the reason why I started doing 2 a week personally was because I was banking too many up.
Yeah.
But then you get yourself into a scenario where you're like, I don't want to be talking about to you guys and airing it in 5 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
that's
let's
true.
do 2 a week. But then you get yourself into a point where you're like, all right, if 2 fall off, then we're fucking kind of cooked here.
Yeah.
We're often helping promote like a new album launch or a tour or something as well. So like if you're posting it after the fact, then it's completely irrelevant to the point that the artist came on.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than trying to talk in past tense.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, your album launch yesterday was great today. Like, you know, it's
I did one recently with the Fever Shack boys
Yes.
from Frankston. And I was like, when I publish this, your new EP will be out. And they were like, will it? And I was like, I don't know, man. It's your EP. You tell me. And I was like, I'll publish it when it's out. And they're like, yeah, I guess it's out. And we were like pointing at the camera, like, go listen to it, I think. And I was just like, God damn it.
It's like sometimes when you think that far ahead, people have a bit of a fucking moment where they think, what? We've missed it? I'm like, so your album's already come out. And they're like, what day is it? Oh my God. I'm like, no, by the time this airs, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, but yeah, I've definitely been in the same spot. Like, you don't want to bank up too many because then you kind of lose track of where you're at, but you also don't want to cut yourself too short because then you're fucked and you don't have a guest for that week. You want to keep to that schedule.
I think without giving away too many secrets, what I'll try and do in the future is find somebody who is not time sensitive, where you can kind of keep up your sleeve, that you don't talk about anything relevant to that, and they're cool for you to just drop it on a rainy day.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. We've got a couple of people like that.
Like an emergency pod that's just like hidden in a little like vault. Yeah, I like that.
And then ultimately, like, I think even if we're completely at a loss, I'm also an emergency pod. Like, I'll just come on and we'll talk about like one of our favorite albums from the early 2010s or something.
Lucky, man.
Yeah.
There's no way I'd ever get my partner.
Get her in. Get her on the pod.
She would not. I do the talking for both of us. No, that's not her. So it's a very different dynamic to what you two guys have got there.
Yeah.
You mentioned Frankston, just to throw away with the Fever Shack guys and the Flipping the Bird lineup. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I was watching the episode that you had with Stu
Phone number's
yesterday.
still on the wall there if you want to give him a buzz.
Beautiful. Yeah, that was a sick episode. What he's doing with Flipping the Bird is crazy. Like those lineups have been so good. And even like when we were living on the Gold Coast, I would see people share that lineup and I'd be like, that's fucking
Off its
crazy.
head, yeah.
Like 30 bands or something. It's nuts.
Yeah. Are you guys going to go?
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to come down here and check it out.
We're planning to. It's just funds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, not that far away.
Nah,
No,
it's more just
not really.
the logistics and stuff.
So
but yeah.
when I say funds, it's like, well, how many other shows do we have to go to within that week for the podcast? And like, are they door spots or are we paying for them? Because we like to actually support the bands.
Yeah.
Like, we actually really don't like to ask for
we
anything.
do get freebies from time to time, and that's always appreciated.
It's lovely.
But the way I look at it is like, if we put money into the ecosystem and then we want to try and do a creative thing in said ecosystem, then that helps keep us afloat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, if bands are getting paid, if tickets are getting purchased, if merch is getting bought,
the people are
then
caring about
we
music.
can still kind of do the thing that we're doing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, if there is people that don't have a whole lot of time that are doing that festival that are down here, you can come and shoot an episode here if you want in the studio.
I mean, that would be sick.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than getting to go from here to,
We could do a crossover episode.
Hey, smart.
The ideas.
Something
The
to think
ideas.
about, but no, it'd
Something in these beers, more.
there is. We need to pay respect to people like Stu, and not just not just him, but people like him, because there's people like him in a lot of different subgenres of music that are basically doing a community service.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
that just love and are so passionate about what they do that they do it at potentially the detriment to their finances
And
and mental health sometimes, because you put a lot of fucking time and effort
I don't know
into that.
how they do it.
Yeah, I was listening to Stu on your episode, and I was like, I know off the top of my head probably like 3 or 4 other people that have a very similar story for like their particular space, like running rehearsal rooms, running shitty dive bars at a loss. You know what I mean? Like trying to make venues work when they're like the hardest thing to work. Like,
And when you ask them, you're like, also, and people would say, oh, that's a bad business model. You're like, fuck, someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do it, then this stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's really important that those sort of people get the respect and that we go and
flowers,
buy tickets.
for
And
sure.
I
Yeah.
think it's really important. And funny, those sort of people are the ones that are most likely the ones that don't toot their own horn as well.
Oh,
Totally,
totally.
yeah.
They always are the most humble, and that means they just suffer in silence too, though. Like,
It's important that we get
until you
down-
get them on the pod and they can yap for 2 hours.
can, yeah. I'd love to do an episode with Stu that's a little bit later in the day, and we can kind of get on the sauce and just
Get
talk more
loose.
shit. And I think he will come in before. Well, that's not till March, I believe, next year. So he will come on before that, and we'll have another chat. But yeah, I love talking to people like him that do a lot for the community, and often don't have a platform to sort of say their piece too much.
yeah, for sure.
Because there is like
Really
an
good point.
infrastructure around all of this, right? Like for every band, there's crew, there's people, managing the venue, there's people, taking gear to and from a show. There's like lots of people involved at different steps of like making that thing happen, and a lot of the time they're not visible.
The unsung heroes.
They're not the ones on stage, you know what I mean?
But that's something that I've tried to do personally with this podcast, is get people that people know who they are but don't know a lot about their
Yeah.
backstory, because I think that's the most interesting sort of thing about people. Someone who's a front man for a band, or someone who's a rapper or whatever, people know a fair bit about them.
Yeah.
You can find it. But
Yeah.
someone who is that person that's just helped out the community for a long time in said subgenre, subculture, whatever it is,
Yeah.
they're the ones that not a lot of people know about, because they kind of sit back and push other people to the front.
Yeah,
And they're also the
absolutely.
ones that have all the cool stories.
Yeah,
Because they know all the crazy shit. It's fucking tucked away.
For sure. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you coming in. Oh, it looks like Reese's ready to... What's he doing now? He's looking at the wall.
He's probably seen a fly or something. He does that.
Oh, he loves
It's very observant.
Owen and Paige, Paige and Owen. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it, guys. And I'd love to get you guys coming back in again to talk about the journey.
Yeah, we would love to.
Yeah, man. Good stuff.
This
is
was
awesome.
great.
Thank you so much for
Loved
having
the
us.
chat. It was awesome.
Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks. See ya.
Oh.